Protests continued to rage in New York City this past weekend as mobs of leftists expressed their shock and outrage over the death of violent criminal vagrant Jordan Neely. Protesters flooded the subway system shouting, "No justice, no peace." And at one point, they even jumped down onto the tracks right as a train was arriving at the station. Watch. This presents a bit of a new spin on the famous trolley problem, if you're familiar with that, though some would argue that in this case there really is no problem. There's no dilemma. We also came very close by the looks of it to seeing a political demonstrator literally touch the third rail, which I'm not saying, I would never say that I wanted to see that happen. I would never say that. I would never say it. But apparently nobody was harmed except for all the normal working people who were simply trying to get on with their day and instead found themselves in the middle of a mob with a collective IQ that barely cracks triple digits. One journalist covering the scene caught this interaction between a black man, trying to get off the train in order to get to work, and a group of protesters who took this as some sort of personal affront. Watch.
Get out of her face! Get out of her face! You can get out of the train or something! Get out of her face! Get out of her face!
So get another train. Take another train. Bro, you hurting her right now, bro. I'm not touching you.
Take the NRQ train. Go and take the NRW for a free transfer, sir. You will not be late for your work. You can find the train.
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear what's being said there, but she's assuring him, well, take a different train. You're not going to be late for work. You with your stupid job. That's right, sir. You know, I'm sorry, but these protesters have decided to use the subway system as a platform for their performative, uninformed, emotional outburst, and so your job will just have to wait. Your need to provide for yourself must take a back seat to their need to get footage of themselves protesting so they can post it to TikTok. This is life in New York City now. You might be accosted by a psychotic drifter while commuting to your job, or you might be accosted by a mob protesting on behalf of a psychotic drifter while commuting to your job. Of course, if you are actually killed by a psychotic drifter, as plenty of people in New York City, especially in the subway, are every year, there will be no protests on your behalf. That's life in the big city. But as the dumb, brainless mob carried on being a dumb, brainless mob, more information about Neely came to light. And it's now abundantly clear, based on reports dating back a decade, that Neely was a known menace. That's important. He was known. People that took the subway every day in New York knew about this guy, a known menace who had apparently been terrorizing commuters in the subway system for years, which is why he was arrested all those times and yet released back onto the street every time. As the Daily Wire reports, quote, a man who said that he was previously assaulted by Jordan Neely is speaking out about his experience in the wake of the untimely death of the 30-year-old. Neely died last week after a U.S. Marine veteran named Daniel Penny and at least two others restrained Neely following alleged threats and erratic behavior on a New York City subway train. Quote, he should have been in some rehab center, said Philemon Castillo Baltazar. Speaking of Neely, speaking to the New York Daily News, Baltazar said that he was assaulted by Neely while he was waiting for a train back in 2019. He says that he was approached by Neely out of nowhere and punched in the head. He said, quote, I felt a punch to my head. He didn't say anything. He just hit me. He hit me above my right eye. The assault victim added that Penny shouldn't be punished for his actions. Now, Baltazar's experience sounds similar to another Neely victim who has also spoken out. This is from the New York Post this time. It says, an assault victim of the dangerous homeless man choked to death by a Marine on a northbound F train this week ripped the city for not forcing her attacker to get the mental health treatment he clearly needs. Ann Mitchell-Tree said she was randomly punched in the head in June 2021 by Jordan Neely inside SK Deli Market on 2nd Avenue in the East Village. The attack caused swelling and substantial pain, but left no permanent damage, After police arrested Neely, Mitchell-Tree, 65, assumed her aggressor would face charges and psychiatric lockup. And she was sadly mistaken in that case. Now, if you've been following the story, you might hear about Ann Mitchell-Tree and think that, well, this is the case that resulted in the active warrant that was still out for Neely at the time of his death. There was a warrant out for his arrest. But you'd be wrong, because Mitchell-Tree is 65 years old. The victim in the other case is 67 years old. Now, it's understandable that you would get them confused, as Neely was going around assaulting multiple elderly women. This man was such a horrendous scumbag that when someone refers to the grandmother he brutally assaulted, you have to respond by asking, which one? Of course, the race hustlers on the left are pretending, as always, that the violent, predatory history of their latest racial martyr is somehow irrelevant. Chief race hustler Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted on Saturday, quote, "Watching media give the Brock Turner treatment for the killing of a homeless man has been nauseating. A person having a record does not excuse killing them. Neither does being poor, sick, or homeless. Virtually every one of us is closer to being in Neely's shoes than we think." Well, speak for yourself, AOC. I can say, and I'm no saint by any measure, but I can say that I am nowhere near the point of walking up to a 65-year-old woman and bashing her over the head. Okay, I'm nowhere near that. If you personally feel those sorts of inclinations, that's your own issue. As for the claim that his record doesn't excuse killing him, well, you're obviously missing the point, and intentionally so. The point about his violent history is, first of all, that it should at least cause you to refrain from turning this man into a canonized martyr. Even if his killing was unjust, which it wasn't. Even if he is a victim, a murder victim, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. Again, I don't concede that. It still would be absurd to pretend that you're deeply mourning the death of a violent predator who apparently contributed nothing but violence and misery to his community. Look, 13,000 people die every hour across the world every day. Okay? It's a lot of people. It is, at a minimum, totally absurd to have a week of national mourning over the death of a violent criminal who assaulted old ladies. I mean, you can claim that every death is sad in its own way. Maybe that's true. But why have you chosen this one? Like, lots of people, we don't have to say across the world, lots of people die every day in this country. There have been plenty of other murder victims just in New York City over the past couple of weeks. And many of those victims had no history of randomly threatening and assaulting pedestrians. So why not choose one of them? Why this guy? With everything going on in the world right now, you could really use a good night's sleep. That's why you need to check out Helix Mattress. Helix has harnessed years of extensive mattress expertise to bring their customers a truly elevated sleep experience. They just launched their new Helix Elite. The Helix Elite collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. I've had my Helix for years now. I absolutely love it. Night after night, I sleep like a sweet, sweet baby, and I want the same for you. To sleep in your own mattress, not in mine, just to be clear. Helix has a sleep quiz that matches your body's type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress, because why would you want to buy a mattress made for somebody else? Go to helixsleep.com/Walsh. Take their 2-minute sleep quiz to find the perfect mattress for your body and sleep type. Their flexible payment plans make it so that a great night's sleep is never far away. For a limited time, Helix is giving you 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Take advantage of this amazing offer at helixsleep.com/Walsh. With Helix, better sleep starts now. You know, the weather is warming up here in Nashville. Do you know what that means? It's barbecue season. I don't want to brag, but I make a mean burger. The last thing I want to be doing when I'm getting ready to host a barbecue is driving around worrying about where to refill my propane grill tank. And that's why I'm a huge fan of Cinch. Cinch is a propane grill tank home delivery service. They deliver propane tanks right to your door. Cinch delivers on your schedule and does not require any long-term commitment or subscription. Plus, delivery is completely contactless. You don't have to wait at home for them to show up. You can track the order on the Cinch app from anywhere. Could not be easier. Whether you're grilling for the Sweet Baby Gang, camping with your family, lighting up your fire pit on a cold summer night, whatever it is, Cinch's propane delivery service ensures that you have the fuel you need to make the most of every moment. So go online to cinch.com or download their app to order. New customers can get their first tank exchange for just $10 with promo code Walsh. So go to cinch.com or download the Cinch app and use promo code Walsh to get your first tank exchange for just $10. That's CYNCH.com, promo code Walsh. This is a limited time order, and you must live within a Cinch service area to redeem it. Visit cinch.com/offer for details. Why are you pretending to be sad about the death of Jordan Neely when we all know that if he'd been killed by some other black homeless guy, you would say absolutely nothing at all? You would step over his body on the street and keep walking without missing a beat. So why Neely then? Well, we've already answered the question. His death is useful to you. There's also another more practical and immediate reason why his brutal criminal history is relevant. Again, the regular commuters on the subway knew him. They knew about his tendency to violence. They knew he was a danger. They knew he was prone to violent outbursts. So there's a very good chance, we don't know if this is true, but there's a very good chance that the people, multiple people, not just one, who restrained Neely on the train that day also knew this about him or heard it from somebody else, said, oh, that's the guy that, And even if they didn't, it doesn't matter because the fact is that Neely made explicit violent threats. Even if they were responding only to those threats in the moment with no knowledge of his background, it would still be more than justified. Now, something else happened over the weekend that I think ties into the story, though it may seem on the surface unrelated. NPR reports, quote, California's reparations task force voted Saturday to approve recommendations on how the state may compensate and apologize to black residents for generations of harm caused by discriminatory policies. The 9-member committee, which first convened nearly 2 years ago, gave final approval at a meeting in Oakland to a hefty list of proposals that now go to state lawmakers to consider for reparations legislation. U.S. Representative Barbara Lee, who is co-sponsoring a bill in Congress to study restitution proposals for African Americans, at the meeting called on states and federal government to pass reparations legislation. Quote, reparations are not only morally justifiable, but they have the potential to address long-standing racial disparities and inequalities, Lee said. The actual payments under this proposal, and it is just a proposal, but if it is enacted, it would be up to $1.2 million each for each eligible black resident. Now, I've already explained why reparations are a ludicrous, unjust, morally incoherent idea. We cannot allow people to cash in on the injustices committed against their ancestors centuries ago. Because if we did that, then everyone, all people on earth, should get a check. Because we all have suffering in our bloodline. We all have persecution in our family tree. Now, which of us are in a better or worse spot because of those historical experiences? It's impossible to say. You especially can't play this game with slavery of all things, given that slavery is a global sin, and there is no race, there is no group which is innocent of it. Africa enthusiastically practiced slavery until the late 20th century. We've talked about this before. An African country was the last country on earth to legally prohibit slavery. And that didn't happen until 1981. And as for the transatlantic slave trade, it was African nations and tribes that caught and captured and sold the slaves into the transatlantic slave trade. So a black person in America today may be the descendant of slaves. He may also be the descendant of slave traders. He may be both. And many of us are likely both if you go back far enough. How does this relate to Jordan Neely? Well, because one argument, you just heard it there from the Democratic lawmaker. One argument for reparations is based on the current condition of the black community, the long-standing inequalities, as we're told. As the argument goes, the black community is in worse shape than most other racial groups by nearly every metric because of this historical legacy of slavery. And these reparations would not only redress the wrong, but they would also help boost the community and then, in a practical way, repair the damage. But practically speaking, this is wrong. You cannot solve a person's problems by just handing them $1 million. Look at the tragic history of Mega Millions lottery winners, if you want to learn more about that. Besides, there is a better and more holistic way to help this community. In fact, I've got two. There's just two ideas off the top of my head. Instead of reparations, we could, first of all, stop lionizing and making role models out of the absolute worst members of the black community. Okay? The left makes heroes out of scumbags of every race. We know that. But at the same time, there's no white George Floyd. There's no white analog for Jordan Neely, which isn't to say that there are no white vagrant scumbag, psychotic criminals going around assaulting people. There are, but none of them are taken and turned into heroes. And on the right, we typically chalk that up to anti-white bias, and it is. But at the same time, as a white person, I wouldn't want mentally ill vagrants and drug-addicted career criminals presented as our martyrs and heroes. I wouldn't even want that. You know, you tend to become what you admire, and these are the black people that the left puts forward for admiration. Second, one of the best ways to help any community is to put the dangerous people in that community in prison. Better than, we talk about repairing damage. Well, instead of repairing damage, how about we prevent damage in the first place? And one way that you could do that is by taking guys like Jordan Neely and locking them away. You cannot pretend that you're interested in helping the black community while you insist on making black neighborhoods more dangerous by refusing to prosecute criminals. Simply enforce the law, enact justice on criminals, and things will change for the better almost instantly. That's my reparations plan. Tear down the George Floyd murals, disband the Jordan Neely protests, put criminals in prison. It's not going to solve every problem, but it'll solve a lot of them. And it's a good start. And it's certainly better than any proposal that the left is currently making. That'll do it for this portion of shows. Move over to Members Block. You can become a member today by using code Walsh at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Hope to see you there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.